the straw that breaks the camel's back. So we'll be right back. So the Fugal feud, the Fugal AARO meeting that we all know about now. Ty, Astral, can you talk to me about what is going on in what I took a couple weeks break and from everything. This means, because I'd wrapped filming for Dudley Road. I took a couple. I needed a break. I was wearing myself way too thin. What is going on here? Because I know there were hints of this meeting at AARO between Fugal and AARO, but all of a sudden the story's now blown up.
Yeah, and
So
I think it's
what's going on?
a lot of it, I think, is because of the involvement of Kirkpatrick and the question of his capacity at which he was at the meeting. And so what we're kind of sifting through right now as a community is, what was said at that meeting, because there's been some recent interviews with Brandon Fugal and also Sean Kirkpatrick, and they both point to this sort of meeting that occurred. And I think there's a lot of confusion and a lot of different accounts of what was taking place at that meeting. And so, just to kind of set it, so I have not been really that critical of Sean Kirkpatrick because I just think that his scientific approach to it and the gathering of the data is one aspect that we need. However, on the other side, with the whistleblowers, I think there's been a lot more controversy in what the whistleblowers have been coming forward and saying, and then also Kirkpatrick's opinions and his involvement in UFOs before he got to AARO. So this is the first time where it's actually addressed where Kirkpatrick was, according to Brandon Fugal, involved in UFOs. And the big statement for me, the thing, and man, this is just, it's like a chink in an armor, and that this could, like you were saying, this could blow the whole thing wide open. And because according to Fugal, Kirkpatrick stood up, that Fugal was there to give a presentation about Skinwalker Ranch. And according to Fugal, during that presentation, right when it got started, somebody stood up and they said, if you're going to talk about the UFO phenomenon, you don't need to do that because everybody in this room acknowledges it as being real. Steve Greenstreet says that his sources say that Kirkpatrick was the one who said that. So if we have evidence of Kirkpatrick saying that, to me, it just debunks his whole a lot of AARO and a lot of what he's been saying, where there's no evidence. He hasn't been interested in this. It's a nothing burger. And so I think this is the first time where people have actual evidence. And so Fugal shared the picture when Kirkpatrick had his interview a couple days later, which was a couple days ago. Fugal shared a couple of pictures of Kirkpatrick at the meeting. And so you could see that, there's a presentation being given. There's figures like Hal Puthoff, Kit Green were there, Fugal. And so the one thing that I was sort of, getting to Brandon Fugal about was he mentioned a video, the full video of the meeting. And so I think what I'd still like to see is the release of that video, because it would show, because to me the picture doesn't show the capacity at which Kirkpatrick was actually there. So we don't know that Kirkpatrick was interested in UFOs. We just know that he was there. And if you listen to Kirkpatrick's interview, he acknowledges that he was there. He said, yeah, I was there at a meeting, but it was for like a continuation of ATIP and OSAP, which makes sense to me because ATIP basically was ended around like 2012. And so to me, ATIP was under Bigelow. Hal Puthoff ended up facilitating the sale of Skinwalker Ranch to Brandon Fugal. So to me, if we're looking at 2018, this was probably a pitch to have a continuation of the program of like a program like Kona Blue, which got denied, but down the road of this another program to look at Skinwalker Ranch. So I would imagine Fugal he was like, okay, I've got Skinwalker Ranch now. I've got all this new equipment. Maybe we can go back and have, you know, a little bit of assistance in a program that actually looks at this again. And I think this was that pitch to basically show these guys that like there's some stuff taking place. And so I think on the other side of the table, they probably brought in Kirkpatrick to be like, hey man, like you are very familiar with like Chinese tech and you know, stuff that's going on that's that you've looked at in the skies with in terms of drones. Maybe you can sit in on this meeting and see. What I think is disputed is that Kirkpatrick wanted to sit in the meeting. He knew about UFOs. He was coming to debunk it. All that is not clear with just those pictures. I think if the video were released, that would be the smoking gun to discard AARO, to discard Kirkpatrick, because if he stands up in that meeting and he says, "Hold on,
And
guys, all of this is real. We acknowledge it." That's it. You
right,
know what I'm
like,
saying?
so dude, because this dude has been on a rampage lately, going on various media saying that there's nothing to this. Essentially, backing himself into a Project Blue Book 2.0 corner. And if there's a if in a meeting, this dude stood up and said, "Listen, you don't need to convince us that UFOs exist. We already know they do." Then this guy is ousted and
Hmm.
AARO is ousted, which means the DOD is ousted, which means the Pentagon is ousted, which means the White House is ousted. That if this video surfaces, it could lead to that watershed moment. This is important, and Brandon has as an obligation.
Yeah.
And I'm not calling on Brandon to do anything illegal. I'm not. But I'm saying that if if he wants his show and all of his research to be taken seriously, then he needs to show the community that that his word can be taken at value. Because if it wasn't said and it's just going to be he said, she said, this whole game, then
Yeah.
then everybody is going to throw the baby out with the bathwater because there's plausible deniability. It's just another story.
Yeah, and I think one of the things too that frustrated me is like UFO Twitter's like spiking the ball like a touchdown dance. Like like everything is done now, and you know, Kirkpatrick's a liar and da da da. Da. Well, he I think probably lied a little bit, but to me, the big reveal would be that video. And I even suggested like you don't even have to release the whole video. Just crop out
Yeah,
Kirkpatrick
just
in
that
that
part.
10-second part and release that, because I think Fugal didn't want and doesn't want to put the other people in the meeting out there like that. So just clip that part and then show that part of Kirkpatrick saying this stuff. And so that's what I think. That's why I was kind of pressing him uh, publicly on Twitter. I was like, dude, like just release the video. Like that would do so much more. And I think people are like, well, we don't need the video. And we, you know, we've already seen he's a liar. And I just don't think that's like, we're not going to be talking about these pictures next week because they're not that powerful to me.
To me, they are. I think this story is among one of the most powerful because it has the because of the stance and the formidable for I don't know if this is a word, how formidable Kirkpatrick has been,
Yeah.
saying and trying to convince the general population that there is nothing to this, that they found no evidence of anything of relevance. But I do want to get your take on something else. The Grush emails with AARO,
The
because there seems to be a lot of communication issues with AARO.
yeah. So in terms of when Arrow was reaching out to Grush and he was sort of saying they weren't.
Yeah,
Yeah. I mean, that's the last year, I think that's been one of the most confusing parts is what Grush has been saying about communication from Arrow, and then Arrow's basically come out. They've even released like signal chats. So they released the signal chats where they were reaching out to Grush on multiple occasions. And I think what I'm not sure exactly what Grush has said in terms of the exact reason why he wasn't able to respond, but there was even like I believe a meeting that was set up with Gillibrand that he was supposed to just show up at, and he didn't show up. And then
Mm.
on the other side, I think Grush was looking at it like they don't have access. Grush seems to believe that the AARO just doesn't have the access to be
So
able to
why
look up his
bother?
claims. So why go through and have the historical report say it's all bullshit?
Right. So again, in a sense, kind of being like, you don't need, because I mean, he did in some of his email, in the one email that, and you can see his response, or he's saying, until you answer my questions, um, I'm not meeting.
Yeah.
So he clearly wanted some type of information that they weren't giving, and it seems from there that the relationship just kind of either crumbled, or Grush lost faith in the entire Arrow system, much like everybody else.
Yeah, and you can see just from like the whistleblowers now, they're not going to AARO. I was a co-host in the Twitter space where Jason Sands came out. And so
Yeah,
and
man.
just on Reddit today, there was another quote unquote whistleblower who revealed a lot of
Oh, I heard.
it was an anonymous account, so it's not really I don't know how credible it would be because nothing was really revealed in terms of identity or programs, I think, but they're looking for ways. Some of these guys want to come out and come public, and they're not willing to just wait around for controlled disclosure to kind of figure it out for them. They're really and I think it's valuable to be able to directly communicate with the community, and the community dig into some of these claims, and not just
Yeah.
waiting for other people higher ups to sort of tell us what's going on. I think we've got a huge group of great researchers and people to look into this.
Yeah, and that's what I've been saying lately, is I think that the disclosure might actually come from civilian scientists
Mm.
and researchers, before it comes from any government official. Um, and I truly think that very well could be the case. Now, with Arrow, and this meeting, in particular with Skinwalker Ranch owner Brandon Fugal, um, is the tape classified?
No, and it wasn't Arrow that he met with. It was a group of staffers.
Oh,
I
I'm
don't know if they
sorry.
were with the DoD, but Arrow hadn't been formed yet. This was sort of before Arrow. This was before few years before the UAP task force was formed. So this
Oh,
was
so this is in like the Jay Stratton days.
this is after, so ATIP in 2012, OSAP ATIP was known to like end around that time. And in my opinion, what was happening in those like 6
Okay,
years or so,
that's back to what you were saying, where it
they were
was a
trying to
pit.
pitch they're trying to pitch these new programs because they didn't get like OSAP and ATIP didn't get what weren't getting funding anymore. So they were probably like, okay, they've sort of maybe exhausted what they wanted or got from Skinwalker Ranch. And that's why I think Bigelow was in part selling the ranch. So in that couple of years was the sale of the ranch to Fugal. And so now Fugal's got the ranch, and Hal Putoff is probably all involved in like, hey man, there's probably still some life in there. Like you could probably pitch the program again, pitch the ranch. You've got all of this new money coming in. You want to really study it in terms of collecting data. And I think that was in 2018 a pitch to sort of be like, hey, come back here. This could be part of another program to study the phenomenon. We've even a slide was up there with like unidentified objects that were pictured. So I think that a lot of it is played out. And then the UAP task force came. Travis Taylor was head of the lead scientist of UAP task force. So there's a lot of connections in there.
Right, right, and Travis Taylor, plays a huge role, and so doesn't Jay Stratton, and with Skinwalker Ranch, and this. Why do you think the government is so heavily interested in Skinwalker Ranch specifically?
I don't think they are anymore.